Are you lost amidst a blizzard of digital marketing information? Are you looking for the most effective way to get in front of the pack using your own expert knowledge? Or are you striving to become an industry leader online? Come in from the cold and join us inside the Igloo today, the #1 content marketing show for peeps who like winning. Each episode of Inside the Igloo, you'll get the inside scoop on what's working and what's not in the world of content marketing from global leaders in the game. Inside the Igloo, we interview the experts who will offer strategy, advice, tips, and tricks that'll set you on a path to branded digital leadership in your field. Inside the Igloo. Stop fighting the icy winds of confusion. Step out of the storm and come in from the cold. Warm up with expert knowledge Inside the Igloo, the #1 content marketing show for peeps who like winning with your host, Wes Ward. Inside the Igloo.
I'm with Joe Pulizzi of Content Marketing Institute for today's special edition of Inside the Igloo. I'm Wes Ward, the host of the show, and we're very, very pleased and glad and excited to have Joe on board today. Joe, how are you?
Wes, I'm great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, we're very excited to have you here. Just for the benefit of our audience, you are a published author. You run Content Marketing Institute. It's a pretty impressive bio. What am I missing in this established pedigree of content marketing that you have?
Oh, I don't think we want to bore the listeners with any of that stuff. I think just real quickly, I've been in the content marketing industry for more than a dozen years now, kind of seeing the ups and downs and privileged enough to be kind of riding the wave here in North America and what's going on with content marketing. And we have the largest content marketing event called Content Marketing World, where we hold every year in North America. It's in Cleveland, Ohio in 2013. We're looking to do the same kind of thing in March of 13 in Sydney, Australia. And we have a magazine called Chief Content Officer, and anything that we can do to educate corporate marketers on what they need to do with their content creation, distribution, and strategy. That's kind of what I'm all about.
So to me, that sounds like you're a bit of an evangelist. Would that be a good description?
Yes, I think that's actually in my bio. So I use that term evangelist because when I really started to go forward into content marketing in 2007, nobody knew what content marketing was, and most people thought I was crazy for kind of spreading this faith of content marketing. And about 2009-10, it really started to take hold. But I really do feel that's kind of my role in the industry, to get out there, to talk about the benefits of content marketing, to have corporate marketers and brands start thinking more about how they can communicate directly with customers and why they should do that. And maybe they can take a little bit off of their advertising program to fund some of those content programs they want to do.
Nice. Now, prior to 2007, what were you doing?
I actually, I worked as a VP of custom media for a company called Penton Media. They're actually the largest independent business publisher in North America. They published over 100 titles, from food management to contracting business for HVAC contractors, to Industry Week for manufacturing professionals, to the health and organic publications. I mean, you name it, for any business niche, they pretty much had it covered. And my job and the team that we put together, we worked on custom content programs for people that didn't want to buy advertising. So basically, when a sales rep would go into a company and couldn't sell them an ad page or a digital sponsorship, they threw them over to us and we worked with them on a content program.
All right, so that was the beginning of your content marketing journey?
That was the beginning. That was in 2000. Yeah, 2000, I started with Penton Media. I was with doing 7 years of that. We grew the organization to a pretty large scale and just working on custom content projects. But I'd always had the entrepreneurial bug, so I left in 2007 to start what is now Content Marketing Institute.
So what was the big takeout? You would have had a massive exposure to a broad base of customers or clients in that role. What made you think, this is the way forward, this is the future of marketing?
It's funny. Somebody asked me that today. I was doing another interview and they said, what was the big aha moment? And I said, there wasn't one big aha moment. It was maybe a lot of little moments. But what I started to realize as I was sitting down with chief marketing officers, across Canada and the United States, and VPs of sales and marketing, started to realize that more and more their marketing objectives could not be fixed with traditional marketing. And at some point, we had to look at their content creation strategies and start thinking about the strategy behind publishing content and how we're going to distribute that content over basically distracting them with an advertising program or basically doing a campaign again. So we started to think more about, maybe the opportunity is to build long-term relationships with content and through creating passionate subscribers like a media company would. Back in 2000, that was, even though content marketing has been around for 100 years, that was still pretty new back in 2000. Shoot, some places I go, as we were talking before, Wes, it's still new in a lot of places.
Absolutely.
The idea that we can communicate directly with customers and there's no barriers to entry for doing that. But I think I went through enough of those meetings, Wes, where I said, oh my God, I really did believe this. And this is when I left. This is about 2004, 2005. I'm like, wow, this is going to be big. Mm-hmm. And when I left in 2007, I put everything behind it. I saved up a lot of money, created what is now CMI, because I really believed that this was going to be the future of marketing.
Excellent. That is a very passionate response. So now for the audience, we realize that it's important, but one of the major hurdles is producing it. I have a lot of clients myself that say, yes, we understand, Wes, it is important and it will help. One of the major problems is actually getting this whole content marketing thing organized. When you start to see marketing officers or even CEOs say, well, what's our return on investment? This is a major hurdle for anyone who believes, such as yourself, about the benefits of content marketing. How do they get around this? And I know in your book, Managing Content Marketing, you address this issue in the first chapter because it's obviously very important. Do you still see that the market, especially in North America right now, is still asking that question, what's my ROI on content marketing?
Well, I think that every marketer in their own way asks, what the marketing ROI is because somebody above them is asking them what their ROI is. I think it's almost, I deal with enough marketers. It's almost a funny question, right? It's like almost laughable because it's like, I'm not going to do that until I know what the ROI is. And I always ask them back, well, do you know what the ROI is of what you're currently doing? Because they normally don't.
Yeah.
So I'm like, don't tell me, you can't do something unless you have ROI when they don't even know what I said, what's your that last ad campaign you did? What was the ROI on that? They don't know. So don't give me that stuff. So, putting that aside a little bit. Yes, of course you want an ROI, but there's no silver bullet measurement strategy that's going to work because your objective, your marketing objective is different than every other company that you're working with. Whether, what is it? Are you really trying to focus on retention, loyalty? Is it cross-selling? Is it lead nurturing? Is it lead management? Lead demand generation? What are you focusing on? What is your goal? And then once we know your goal, then we can look at the metrics behind that goal. Those are sharing metrics. Those are consumption metrics. You have lead metrics. You have quality of lead. Then you actually have sales metrics. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do, right? So I think that if you take it back though, and if you're going to ask me, how do you really get started? I think you get started with, making that business case through a very small test. And I'd look at one of two things. Yeah. One is there a problem that you have in your organization that is just, you can't figure out a way to solve it any other way? Maybe there's a content solution for that. That's just been killing you, that you just can't get right. Figure out, maybe you have to look at it a different way and figure out a content solution. On the other hand, what is there something that you are just kicking butt at that you feel that you could really take it up a notch with and layer on a content program on top of that? So I would look at the very top of the very bottom to do almost a practice test. I call it a beta test. And that's the way that we're seeing a lot of the organizations we work with get started, because you're not going to walk in. Let's say you read Managing Content Marketing and you're a believer, and then you're going to walk in and say, I'm going to do a content marketing strategy right now, and we're going to get everybody on board. Your whole department would laugh you out of the office, right? They'd be like, are you kidding me? We don't do any of that. I don't know what you're talking about. He's lost or he or she's lost.
I don't even know what a blog is.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, get out of here. So what basically you want to start what's called some kind of beta test. Focus on that one problem. Focus on a small group of people, and execute on that one thing that what that measurement's going to be. Let's say, for example, you're going to say, we're having a problem getting found on Google because we want to lower our paid pay-per-click advertising and we want more organic. So to be found organically in Google. So you might say, we're going to do that. We're going to launch a blog and we're going to do it over 6 months. And here's how we're going to measure it: by being found in these keywords. And we're going to measure it by people signing up to our blog, our email newsletter, something small like that. Mm-hmm. And I think if you start there and then you say, hey, we did 6-month test. Here's where we went right. Here's where we went wrong. We think we've done the test. Let's take it to the next level. And then maybe you add in a more robust e-newsletter program or a lead nurturing program or a white paper ebook program or a podcast or a print newsletter or digital magazine for all that matter, something like that. So I would just say start small over one problem and then go from there.
And I think that's really good advice because there are so many options. Like you've just reeled out quite a few different formats that would go down different channels or of media. A lot of people can go, oh my God, I just don't know where to start. And so that would be a very important hurdle to overcome. But even if we strip this right back and look at it is an emerging industry, even though it's been around for 100 years. And there's the classic example of the John Deere's magazine in 1895 or 96, The Furrow, is one of the first examples of content marketing. What is your definition of content marketing?
I think if you're just going to say what the simplest way to put it, it's basically you're acting more like a media company than a sales and marketing company. So basically you are publishing content, valuable, compelling, relevant content on a consistent basis to attract and retain customers for the purpose of what? To do some type of behavior differently, to maintain or change behavior. That's exactly what it is. It's what publishers have been doing since the dawn of time, except they have been doing it to get advertising or to make money through advertising or basically make money by somebody buying their content. What you're going to do is the same types of things, but you're doing it to sell more products and services, either directly or indirectly. That's basically it. And I think the biggest thing that I like to get across to people when they think about this, they think channels, right? And you were just saying we reeled off a number of them, right? Whether that's blogs or podcasts or social media channels where you're putting content in like Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. Those are all fine. But before you do anything like this, you have to ask the question why. And the question why is the content you're creating going to be important to your target audience?
It's not a bad question, is it?
Right? Because I've seen it work. I've seen people come back to me and say, Joe, I saw that thing you did on blogging. We started a blog and we've been doing it for a year and we haven't seen anything. And I said, well, that's kind of odd. Let's look at your blog and what you're doing. And I go look at it and it talks all about them, their services. Basically what they did was they took an advertising message and shoved it into a blog.
Right.
So and that's the problem that we see with content marketing because it has to be the biggest soft sell ever. You're selling by giving them great content. So ultimately you'll build a relationship with them. And when they have a buying need, they think of you. But you don't do it through the direct sell because now you can communicate amazingly. You can communicate directly with your customers and we're just going to hit them over the head with sales messaging. So the first thing you need to do with a content marketing strategy is figure out what type of content you're going to create or why do you matter to your customers so that this is going to work for you in the first place.
And a strategy that you were very eloquent in your book is about creating a compelling story and overlaying that with your content strategy. In my experience, storytelling is where it begins and where it ends. If you really want emotional, rusted on, trusted, engaged people, storytelling is very, very important. How do you overlay a story? And this is one thing that I actually had a bit of a problem with when I was reading through your book is if we're in a particular market where a lot of education needs to be applied out there because people don't understand our product, they don't understand our industry very well. How do you tell a story over the width and breadth of say 3, 4, 6 months where you might be going through phases of your storytelling and you're not providing an answer in the early days to this story, so you're not really completing a loop? Do people have to wait a year to find out the end of your story?
No, I think that you have to it's a good question, but I think you have to figure out where your customers are at, right? I don't want to think about it as the story will move along for customers, and that's basically marketing automation, if you want to get technical with it. And that's why it works. So let's start from the top, right? Let's say that at the top of the funnel, and this is easier for B2B people listening.
Absolutely.
But if you get it at the top of the funnel, you get their attention. Let's say they signed up and they say, oh, I'm going to sign up for their newsletter. Okay, well, you know something about them. And then as you get a little bit more information, you're taking them down, you figure out where they're at in the buying process, you send them white papers and ebooks, maybe a webinar, and then as you're getting closer to the conversion, maybe that's another ebook or a podcast that takes them along. Look, consumers are completely in control. They're going to start to self-select the type of content. That's not going to be up to you to necessarily deliver it.
Yeah.
If you understand kind of how the buying process happens, they can structure their own significance of how they're going to make this buying decision through the content that you have and that they get from other people.
And I think this was a really important point. Sorry to interrupt, but this is where content marketing got really real for me. is that you align strategy with the buying cycle. That was amazing.
Well, it's not something we invented. That's for sure.
I know, but you know what? I've been hunting around in this space for a little while now, and I haven't seen anyone do it. And that's what shows the maturity of this industry where it's at right now. It's still early days, embryonic, just about.
Well, I think that if you get to that level where you're really looking at your segmentation strategy and where they're at in the buying process, and then starting to put in where the storytelling comes in for basically why you're, I mean, simplest way to put it is, why are you interesting to them? I mean, and you put that through the buying process, then you're very sophisticated. I mean, but let's be honest, most companies don't even do segmentation in their databases right now. So they potential for doing this, but you have to start somewhere. So you can at least start with one segment. That's your database that you have, and you know that you have a group of people that are aligned over something. You can start there, and then as you get more data about them, then you can start to do multiple segments, and then you can start to parse off different content strategies for those buyer personas, because at the start you might not have them, but at the end, you know, you probably have, like in a B2B company, you normally have 7 different buyers that buy you at different levels, but maybe you have 3 buyer personas. You have somebody in IT, maybe a CFO level, and maybe a chief marketing officer or a plant manager, or whatever the case is, depending on your marketplace. So I guess what I'm saying is it's so easy and yet so complex when you get it down to that level. And that's why it's exciting to be where we're at in content marketing, but there's still a long way to go.
And it's this concept of personas or consumer avatars that really gets my juices bubbling, because all of a sudden you've got a clear target. It makes the process of creating content and producing content so much easier. And having this planned structure, it's easy to sort of just jump past and go, all right, I'm going to write a blog post or an article today. But doing the grind of the planning certainly makes the job so much easier in the long run, and ultimately more sustainable, do you think, for your content marketing efforts?
Well, it's so funny here's the thing that hit me while you were saying this, and it's just so telling. So most organizations don't set up buyer personas. They don't even have them set up. So if you don't know, and here's the funny thing, right? Because then you have multiple people creating content in the organization. Multiple people creating the content in the organization. They don't know who the buyers are, or they don't. I mean, you need these buyer personas pasted up on the wall. Like if you have a writer,
give them a name.
Yeah, if that's created, give them a name. This is Julie. Julie gets up at 8:00 every morning, goes to the coffee shop. Julie likes to, go shopping every Saturday. Whatever. Give Julie a personality so that the writer knows who they're writing to. And then you can construct, why? What's the big why? If you don't have a persona, you don't have a big why. And then that's how you get lifeless content. That's how you get content that's created that's just stuff, and it's not valuable, compelling stuff, because you get people creating that content that don't know the bigger vision behind it. So just a simple thing, if you are creating content, you don't have a buyer persona, then you probably don't have a content marketing mission statement. You're probably not being successful, because if you don't know what the end result is supposed to be, I don't understand how you're going to be successful creating content.
And it's part of the bigger picture as well, because if you don't have a buyer persona, well, it's not just content marketing, it's marketing within your organization. How are you setting up your ad campaigns, your TV campaigns, who you're targeting, what's your demographics? It's just going to be wasted money and wasted energy and resources.
I think, well, you're exactly right. And I think that now, because consumers basically have access to make their own buying decisions, they don't have to go to salespeople anymore if they don't want to. They can, but they don't have to, right? They can get all the information that they want themselves. So we have to kind of raise the bar and that next step. And I don't want to say that marketing is antiquated, there's very sophisticated traditional marketing programs all over, with companies in Australia, all over the world. That's not an issue. But I think there's definitely a mindset change when it comes to content excellence versus creative excellence. We've been traditionally very good at creative excellence, not so much at content excellence, and that's where I see the shift going.
Right. And in your experience, especially from your previous employer, now we have, theoretically at least, to a lot of people, the opportunity to build a relationship, build an audience directly from our organization. If we view it through the lens that, we are now a publisher, we can actually have more value and not even need intermediaries like traditional magazines, traditional publishing houses. Do you think that's realistic, or just theoretical it might be there in about 10 to 15 years' time?
Well, I'm a little bit biased.
And that's why you're on the show.
Exactly. I almost say this every speech that I give, and I say that if you don't have the mindset going into your content marketing strategy that you need to be the leading informational provider for your industry, you will fail. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe this because your customers have the opportunity to choose their content from anywhere. They can get educated. They can get their questions answered from anyone. It could be your competitors. It could be a media company. It could be a blogger down the street. It could be anybody, right? That's going to give them the information. It could be their neighbor. It could be the information they need to make a buying decision. And I feel if you don't at least strive to become the leading informational provider, then what are you creating? Just content that's just so-so? Is it so salesy that it's not important to your customers? I mean, I think that's kind of where we're at. I think you're seeing it happen. I think you're seeing companies like Red Bull that are saying, our content has to be the best content in the world, which by the way is a fantastic example of content marketing. Mm-hmm. Well, Coca-Cola is really trying to do it. We've been trying to do it since day one. We said if we're going to be the leading provider of content marketing, consultancy, we've got to be the leading information provider first. Mm-hmm. And so that was always our take to do that. And I think it's worked fairly well to this point. So I would just say to anybody out there, your strategy should be, just like in traditional publishing, it was always, we wanted to be the number one book in our field. Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't exist anymore. You're competing with all the magazines in your field and then Google and 15 going after that niche. So I think the best advice that I could give for companies looking to do this is normally when they look at kind of the content that they're going to cover, they usually go too wide. Right. They go and can't cover everything. You can't, like I always say, well, can you be the leading expert in the world at that? And they could say, no, that's too broad. I said, well, then you're too broad with your content strategy. Mm-hmm. You have even more niche. So I would go down as niche as possible. Like if you're going into pet supplies, it should be, people that are buying pet supplies that like to ride around in recreational vehicles with pets. Yep. Like that's how specific I would get on your buyer, and I think you'll be more successful.
The analogy of an inch wide, a mile deep is always the same.
Yep, exactly.
While you were talking there, I sort of felt on behalf of all business owners out there, they're throwing their hands up going, that's great for Red Bull. That's great for Coca-Cola. They got budget. They can just whack, 200,000, $1 million over there for content marketing production. Is it really the domain of the bigger guys, or is it a case for the smaller guys being more resourceful, but the way they get around it is just being highly strategic and well planned? Is it a game for the medium and size and bigger boys? No,
I actually think that, and you're right, you caught me on two bigger examples because people don't know who they are.
Yes.
I said, I should have talked about, Conditioned Air, which is a heating and air conditioning company out of Naples, Florida, that is dominating their market because they do 2 blog posts a week. Right. And they've been doing it for the last 3.5 years.
So how do they do to, but we've got plumbers, we've got builders, we've got engineers, we've got, small size firms, medium sized firms all out there, all around the world. They would straight away go, how do you write, 2 pieces a week for 3 years about air conditioning?
Well, I think the first thing is they set a strategy and then they get people to help them.
Yeah.
If you look at the number of companies that outsource some portion of the content marketing process is over 50%.
Right.
So basically, and it's been done forever, right? You hire marketing services providers to help you. It's okay to do that. I think the strategy should remain internal, but you can get people to help you on strategy, but you have to own your strategy and then find people to help. The thing that I think is funny all the time is people tell me, we don't have content. And I'm like, this is the biggest fallacy ever when it comes to content marketing. I always say, you have reams of content. You just don't have content in story form. That's the difference. So I say, look at the emails you're sending back and forth with your customers. You're probably not doing anything with that. Look at customer service, talking to your customers all the time. Look at all that content you have that you're not taking down and having an editor and a writer take that content and put it out there and make it available. Look at your annual report that is so salesy, but it's got some great data in there that you could take and put that into an ebook. Those types of things are just not being thought. Here's the biggest thing. I've been to at least 100 events sponsored by bigger brands, bigger, smaller brands, that simply didn't even record the sessions that were going on and could reuse those sessions.
Oh my God. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I just almost cry. I'm like, wow, you've spent $100 and some $1,000 or whatever it is to put on this event, and you didn't even record and get content assets that you could tell. So like we just had our big event, Content Marketing World, in September. And what we tried to do is record everything that we could. And realistically, we probably have a year's worth of content just from that one event. Yeah. And if you just start thinking differently about all the content you have, you basically have a lot. I would say then you have to figure out, get really good editors, get really good help to turn that raw content into really good stories that's going to help you with your strategy.
And I think also what's evolved probably, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, over the last, say, 2 to 3 years, are the platforms to help manage and outsource this. You look at platforms like Xeris and the like. That was a new phenomenon for me, 6 months ago or whatever. I was researching how do we manage all of this. And now there are actually tools to help make it easier. And like you said, it's okay to outsource. Do you have preferred platforms that work, or is it just different, horses for courses, so to speak?
I think that there's so many really good ones out there. I mean, I can, whether it's Xeris or Kapost or Compendium or Knowledge Vision, or depending on what you're trying to do, technology is available. Let's put it that way. But even simple enough, if you just needed to use a Google Docs or Excel, you could do that and get, obviously then you'd upgrade into a Xeris or a Kapost or something like a Compendium or something like that, which is fine, but it's usually not, we don't have a technology problem right now. We can do everything we need to it. I think it's more of a mindset problem because it's funny. Think about what you were saying, 5 minutes ago. You said people say that 2 blog posts a week is too much. Just think of it. And you're right. I hear it all the time too. But you're really thinking about, wow, we can communicate directly with our customers and think about the value of, let's just look at the value of one blog post. Well, I'll give you an example for me. I've been blogging for 6 years now. I still have a couple blog posts that get hundreds of people a day to it. And we get multiple leads coming in, sometimes multiple per day on one blog post. And it's been going on for 6 years. Wow. Are you telling me that you can't spend 2 hours and create raw content and have that edited and search engine optimized and placed on your blog and promoted the right way, which it takes about 2 hours to do that? Are you saying that's not important enough? If that's not important enough, then
shouldn't be in business.
Yeah, it's like, and that's the problem because they don't see how important this is going to be down the road, and it doesn't happen right away. So we still think in campaigns, right? Oh, this is do a blog we're going to do a blog strategy. Here's our 3-month, 6-month plan. And then a lot of companies stop. There's some really interesting information from IBM. This is from 2010 that said 85% of the corporate blogs out there have 5 or less posts.
Yeah. That does not surprise me at all.
That in, you say brands are really good at starting content and not really good at consistently doing content. And that's the difference. Content promise to your customers that you never stop. And it's not a campaign.
Yeah, 2 words came up for me while you were explaining that too, is that, and I always advise this to clients, is that, that extra 5% to optimize a blog post, it's perfect forever. And the 2 words was basically an educational legacy. You've written a blog post 5 years ago that's still relevant to a particular consumer or user today, and it's still getting traffic, and it survives and overrides or persists over campaign mentality where it begins, it ends, and a year from now you wouldn't even know it existed. Whereas when even just with a simple blogging strategy, the content's compelling, it's still going to be on the web in 5 years from now and still attract clicks, but also build up your publishing authority with Google, which is not such a bad thing.
No, what you're using, I would call it's an annuity. It's an asset, right?
Yes, good call.
Asset. And that's what we're thinking of. And that's the great part about a great story that you can tell, because you can tell that story in 10 to 15 different ways, depending on the channels that you choose, whether that's Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, SlideShare, blogs, ebooks, white papers, podcasts, whatever, right? You have a story idea, you're going to share that multiple ways. Those things live on and are shared for a long, long time. You can consistently repackage that content. But let's say that that $5,000 or $10,000 you put into that strategy and distributing that in 5 or 10 different ways. Let's say that was one ad. That ad is gone, and you'll see the impact away, and then it's gone. And that's, by the way, I'm not an advertising hater.
No,
but we're in for a correct. It's I call it a traditional advertising correction. We're going to see that right now because we've been so focused on mass media mentality for so long. Now we're finally getting back to what we were doing 100 years ago, and it's communicating with consistent stories to our customers that we were doing 100 years ago, and then 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years ago in caves.
So do you think we should delete the Super Bowl ad campaign then?
No, I mean, hey, if I had the money, I'd be doing
it. That's reach, isn't it?
It is. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that companies like GoDaddy and others have seen that it's being successful. But the one thing that you're seeing in that, and this is what's happening and why, see, if you're going to, and Papa John's has done a really good job with this. I don't know if you've seen the Papa John's stuff. So they spend $1 million+ on doing an advertisement, but they say, we're going to give away 1 million pizzas. And if you want to get that, you can, but you got to go and sign up on our site right now.
Yeah.
They're building their database so they can create content marketing programs out of them.
And this is one thing that I explain to clients and people who are genuinely interested in this field. I think it's important to build your platform, your online platform, which is your holistic content marketing approach, because then you do those campaign-driven things, whether it's PR or advertising, you're getting a lot more leverage or bang for your buck when you do those campaigns.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, PR, absolutely. The thing that's funny, you mentioned PR.
Yeah.
I was at I was at a book marketing convention. So they use press releases more than anyone else, right? They're selling a new book. We're going to send out a new. I'm with 2 of the leading consultants there, and they both said that they've stopped press releases altogether. They don't work. No more PR. We're not doing any traditional PR, whatever. We're focusing on long-term content strategies and one-on-one communications.
Wow. And this was a traditional publishing house.
Yeah, the traditional publishing, as a traditional publicist that work with.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they're going that direction now. So I just think it's interesting that, I think PR can be a big part of content marketing. Just a natural fit. PR is good storytellers, but instead of getting placement, we have placement already because we built that platform.
Yes.
We already have the audience, so there's no need. If we get placement from the media, that's bonus. But we already have our customer bases that we're talking to, so that's what we really care about.
Well, all of a sudden you've got your own audience, so you're not in the business of pleading, begging, and scraping for a journalist to publish your story.
And wouldn't that be something? That's what I think we all want, right? It's like we want people to actually like our marketing, and they raise their hand and say, "Yes, would you please send me more marketing?" That's what we're talking about. That's really, I've used the sample from Procter & Gamble, which is homemadesimple.com,
yes,
which is a nice little content marketing platform site that they've had up for almost 10 years now. They've got over 10 million people signed up to get that. And I always say, well, wouldn't it be like if you had 10 million of your customers that raised their hand and said, yes, Procter & Gamble, would you send me more marketing? Exactly what. So, and there's no reason not to do it. And as you can see, Procter & Gamble still spends a lot on advertising, but more and more of that is being directed to figure out what their customers' needs and wants are so that they can solve those challenges with content and then ultimately with products.
Excellent. Now, just one last question. I believe content marketing is not just in the realm of digital. There is offline and the bigger holistic opportunities for integrated content marketing. And one of those would be like speaking from stage. That, for me, seminars, online real world presentations is just another form or medium or channel of presenting great content that's relevant and engaging, etc. You're moving down that path with content marketing world. You've already hosted a couple of events, I believe, and you'll be coming out to our side of the world in Australia next year. Who are the type of people that would benefit most from coming along to that? Are they just ordinary business owners, or are they chief marketing officers? Who's this appealing to?
Anybody who is touching the content process in some way, content creation, distribution, or needs to know about it to get their job done. So generally, we've seen marketing managers up to CMOs and then CEOs of small businesses that will be there that are making clear decisions on what they need to do with content. The thing that I love what you're talking about in-person strategy. And when you start to create a content marketing strategy and then you look at the channels involved, so many, I mean, it's funny here in this, I don't know if you have this problem in Australia, but here in the States, there's just this focus on digital channels.
Yeah.
Where you need to look at all three legs of the stool. You need to look at print, in person, and as well as digital. So you can't shut one out just because. So we've really focused on the in person as one of our cores, and we see Australia and Asia Pacific in general as a huge opportunity, which is why we're coming over and bringing a lot of our consultants and experts over from the States.
And that's why we love to have you over here. Joe Pulizzi, thank you so much for coming inside the Igloo today to tell us a lot more in depth about content marketing and why we should be doing it. We'd be really pleased to hook up with you in Sydney next year and talk further about this. And just thank you for coming on board today.
Wes, thanks for having me anytime. And anytime, I love talking content marketing, and I'm looking forward to meeting you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks. Bye for now.
You've just been Inside the Igloo, the #1 content marketing show for peeps that like winning, with your host, Wes Ward. For more information about leading your market online, visit Content Igloo at www.contentigloo.com.